Alright, so we're gonna watch a video. I will say I watched it before. To give my opinions on it. It is a video. It's making the rounds. Um, by this guy Tommy NFG, and it's about his opinion on why war won't work with Gen Z. Having said this, I'll give my takes on it, but my summary after seeing it already is um, he basically defeats his own argument for himself many times in this video. Um, but yeah, let's let it take away.
You know, they say every couple of generations, one generation is bound to experience the most life-changing events in history. And so far, it's looking like Gen Z is fitting the boot. Okay.
I mean, there's life-changing events that happen all the time throughout history. Just affects different individuals, different countries, different states, or whatever. It's not like it only happens once every 50 years. I mean, there's stuff that happens all the time. It just how it affects you might be different. How it affects me, how it affects me might be different. How it affects you. So yeah, let's not just act like just there's always just one generation that has to deal with everything.
And maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but can you blame me after all the things we've had? Most of us were born around the time or after one of the most devastating terror attacks in modern times happened. We saw.
Okay. This is my first argument with it. He brings up 9/11. If you were born either right around or after, you're not feeling the same effects that people that were born before 9/11 are. I was born before 9/11. I was 20 years old when 9/11 happened. The aspect of what life was like before, what life was like during, and what life was like after are three different things. You had the life before where nobody besides individuals in the World War II era had ever experienced the United States being attacked. I mean, we had the Oklahoma City bombing, we had the World Trade Center bombing in '93, but it just wasn't on that level as two planes flying into a building. At the same time, going during that process, it wasn't like today where you could get on your phone and see everything live happening. I was working at the time. I got a call from my mom at 9 in the morning saying, "Hey, this had happened," and then like a couple minutes after that, the radio kicked over. I didn't actually see footage of what had happened with the World Trade Center until 3 hours later, like around lunch when I had lunch to be able to go. You still had people shopping, in stores. That was like a wild thing to me. Was you had buildings that had collapsed. You had, the Pentagon that was attacked, and you had people that were still in a store trying to buy shoes. And you're like, what the living hell is this? If you weren't born before 9/11, and I mean like 10 years before 9/11, to say that it affected your life when you were born after it, no, it didn't affect your life after. You were born after the effect of it. And that's the world that you know. And even then, by the time most of you were mature enough to understand or recognize what's going on around you, it didn't really affect you. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. There was a lot of things that went on and happened that might have affected people, but it didn't affect me because it wasn't in that realm. September 11th affected me because of what had happened. If you were born after that, those waves had probably already passed. I mean, it didn't affect, and you didn't have the full understanding of what had happened before. So to try to act like you were affected by 9/11 if you were born during or after, when you didn't come of age until 2015, 2016, that's an L take.
Our parents trying to keep their sanity during the 2008 financial crisis. As soon as we stepped out into the real world as adults, everything decided to shut down because of COVID in 20.
I will give them COVID. Not so much with that recession, even though the recession was a big thing. I think there would be an argument more over the depression of the 30s era. My grandparents grew up in that time period. To have to experience people lose their house, wonder if you're going to have food on the table during the Depression era, is I think more in a deeper effect than the recession. I'm not saying that people weren't affected the same way in the recession, but it wasn't on the level that the Depression was. But I will give these kids COVID because the nonsense that they went through for those 2 years, depending on what state you lived in, was just mind-numbingly ridiculous.
2020. We've been having drills since we were 5 at school in case a lunatic comes in and mows the whole school down. And now
Okay, so school shootings isn't just this generation. I hate the generation thing. I think it's more eras than it is generation. I think you had the nuclear era with or the atomic era, and you probably had the digital era that came around probably 2008ish, 2009ish, and I think that's you had the atomic era in and the digital era begin, and school shootings have been around. Um, I think, I mean, you probably go back to the 80s, but I think they were more prevalent beginning in the 90s. I mean, you had Columbine, you had a few others in that time period. But even before that, I mean, depending on where you lived, you could have people that came in your school with a gun that had beef with somebody that they were either in another gang that disrespected their girlfriend or something wrong and would shoot people up. So yeah, the drills are new, and that's an experience that I didn't ever have to go through when I was in school. But to make it seem like you're the only generation that grew up with school shootings when it's been around for about 40 years, um, I don't know, it's kind of convoluted.
Now to add the cherry on top, we may be running back the draft and being put on the warfield. Excuse me, I meant you guys may be running back the draft and on the warfield. I just found out I'm highly on the spectrum, so unfortunately
When did this whole thing about being on the spectrum become a thing? When I was growing up, look, autism was around, being autistic was around. The spectrum thing wasn't. And I'm not poo-pooing like this whole thing, but if you're on the spectrum, it doesn't mean that you're autistic, dude. You might be slower on certain things, you might not understand certain things, but you're not on that level of mental defect to where you can't take care of yourself. If you can sit here and make a video and decipher, you know, aspects of life and be able to take care of yourself, you're on the low end of the spectrum, dude, and you would be perfectly fine in war. Try to make that as an excuse is just stupid. Leave that to the actual autistic kids that just don't have any understanding of life, that can't really take care of themselves, that need people to take care of them. Leave that to them. Everybody else, if you're on the spectrum, get over yourself. You're a fully functional adult. You can wipe your ass after you crap. Let's not act like you're anything special or you're anything on some sort of, mental handicap level. Um, you're perfectly fine.
that means I can't qualify. But good luck, future soldiers. I'll give y'all each a high five and you can have fun on the battlefield. It's crazy how Gen Z is kind of running back what millennials had. Because millennials had a war growing up with a terrible economy and had to worry about if they could even afford a house. But man, at least they had good music coming out. What the do we have for these turmoil times? Lil Mabu? I don't think I really have to explain too much what's going on. If you don't keep up with the news, you've probably seen the memes already about hitting 360 no scopes on the battlefield. But the United States of America officially got involved with the Israel and Iran.
I don't know when you made this video. It was put out 3 days ago. The war, Israeli-Iran conflict, was already over. It was over in a day. Israel knocked out Iran's defenses in the first day. They had no defenses. The Iran was falling apart. There was not going to be a war or a draft. I don't understand that. I saw that too. Like everybody online, stay offline when crap like this happened. Everyone was going straight to World War. It's World War III. It's World War III. You guys have no sense of geopolitical theater. The only time we're going to have World War III is if China decides to make a move. Whenever China decides to make a move, either on Taiwan or wherever, and we have to get involved, that's when it's going to start. That's when you have to worry. But all this other stuff, it's not going to cause World War III. Everybody thought Russia invading Ukraine was going to cause World War III. It has not. It won't. It just makes Russia look stupid. Russia has invaded numerous countries in the last 60 years, and they've either taken over the country or they, like in Afghanistan, fought for 10 years and then left. There's actions and then there's actual war. This was just an action, and it was over before it even started. And the fact that this guy is even talking about this when the conflict had probably been over for 3 days at this point, hell, maybe he is really on the spectrum.
Iran conflict, and decided to drop 3 bombs on what they say is their nuclear sites. But of course,
It was more than three. We dropped a crap ton of bombs and we destroyed their nuclear facilities.
that's just a theory. A game theory. Alright, I'm sorry. I feel like I need to take these matters more serious. Now, I'm not gonna say too much of my personal opinion on it and break this down like it's a 5-hour political podcast. I usually say and talk about things more on stream, so definitely go follow me on there in the second channel. But it's not surprising that everyone is scared online and doesn't know what's gonna happen. You know,
Stay off the internet, okay? Now, he's going to get into talking about propaganda in a minute, in which I'll have more further conversation on. But X, anything on the internet is straight propaganda these days. It's just straight BS. It's straight lies. It's straight bots. It's just trash. Do not believe it. If you get online and get yourself over anxious over a situation that it's not going to turn out that way, like everyone thought it was going to be World War III, and it did not turn out that way, you're causing yourself your own problems. And maybe that's what this generation does. They cause themselves their own problems, because I think the majority of people knew that World War III wasn't going to start because of what Israel was doing with Iran.
in the past, you usually didn't have a president tweeting that they bombed a country, then posting a low PNG photo of the American flag right after. This is definitely the worst time to be the ripe age of 18 to 25, because we going first if the draft.
I don't know. I think during Depression, if you're 18 to 25, that wasn't a good time. I think during the Middle Ages, with, you know, if you got a scratch on your leg, the possibility of dying of infection was pretty high. Hell, during the Civil War, if you took a bullet through your arm, they just cut it off. So, yeah, I think there's been plenty of other times being 18 to 25 were worse than what you little nerds sitting in an air-conditioned house bitching on, media, bitching on different platforms while making money off of the bitching and complaining about. I think you guys have it pretty easy. But okay, let's continue.
Happens. Unfortunately, high school class of 2025, you only got a couple of seconds of freedom before you were cooked. I've been thinking to myself for a while, in a hypothetical unlikely scenario of them actually doing a draft, the government doesn't realize that
it would not work with Gen Z.
So your whole concept of this video is why Gen Z won't go to war, but then you just nullified your argument by saying that a draft is hypothetical and really wouldn't happen, but if it did, this is how Gen Z would react.
Gen Z has got to be the worst generation for them to try and get on the war train with them. And this isn't even mentioning about all the femboys and furries we got, not even talking about how half of us are either morbidly obese or twigs. One of the main reasons I think war wouldn't work with Gen Z is because the propaganda age of America is officially dead. And
my man, you just made a video about why your age group would not go to war because you're buying into World War III in a conflict between Israel and Iran, saying that propaganda is dead, and you just made a video on World War III propaganda about how your generation wouldn't go to war. If propaganda is dead, why are you making a video about going to war or not going to war for World War III? Propaganda is probably at its highest peak than it's ever been, and it's easier to be susceptible to propaganda these days than it ever was before. You have people believing in that the earth is flat. You have people believing that that there's a race of lizard people in this world. You have people believing that we've never left, the terrestrial grounds, never been to the moon. You have people believing all sorts of crap, nonsense online. propaganda is easier to affect a multitude of people these days than it ever was before. You can go online and make some bullcrap up. Hundreds of thousands of people could see it and believe it, when normally it would take weeks before that would even touch hundreds of thousands of people. So to say that propaganda is dead, dude, you're making a video about propaganda.
And not just America, any country that has some form of free press is absolutely cooked. The reason why people back then were so patriotic and would do anything to be in the army in war times, you had kids who were in high school lying about their age so they could serve in the army, was because so many people trusted what the politicians said and how the media said things. Politicians were treated as saintly figures that
Okay. This is one of the parts of the video that annoyed me, and it's one of the parts where, again, this generation, it's so easy that you can look anything up these days and find historical context, facts, or any information that you need. You have more information in the palm of your hands than any age group before you in the history of the world. I'd say the golden age for politicians was probably between 1941 up until 64, 65. Because you had that golden age of where, yeah, people respected politicians. People, I wouldn't say believed everything necessarily, but there was a higher respect. I don't think they put them on a saint level. Do you have individuals in each party that put politicians on a saint level? Yeah, you do. You just have individuals like that. But I think from 41 to about 66, before the counterculture really started taking over, was probably the peak time for politicians. You had people threatening politicians during the Depression. You had people threatening politicians during the World War One. Even beforehand, you had politicians being shot. You had politicians being beat up. There wasn't this saintly thing only up until the last 10 years or so. Hell, go during the 70s. Everybody hated politicians in the 70s. It wasn't until the 80s when Reagan kind of brought back this believing in America, believing in yourself, that you had probably a second degree of a little bit more respect for politicians through the 90s. But you still had people that didn't believe in them. You still had people that hated politicians. You still had people that thought they were corrupt. So to sit there and make it seem like your generation is the only one that didn't, respect, or that there was nothing but just every generation before you just fell down hands and knees in front of politicians. That's not true. I mean, you had from 1966 to about 76, 75, you had a whole counterculture that protested against anything that politicians did. And again, it's so easy for you, my man, just to study, just to look up these things before making a crazy opinion take on this situation.
I would never do bad for the American people, because why would they? They sit on podiums and do cool speeches about us fighting for our democracy and freedom. And now we look back at certain conflicts America got in and realize that there was no point in us being there. Like, almost nobody nowadays thinks the Vietnam War was something.
Nobody nowadays. Again, my man, you had the counterculture develop in the 60s that protested against the war. And to the point at the end of the war, you had a majority of Americans that did not think that the Vietnam War should have been fought, did not want our boys being in Vietnam anymore. To make it seem like everybody was just cool with it and we're just now discovering, oh man, yeah, we shouldn't have been in that. This is an L take from him. This is just, it's easy to just look up the counterculture protest of the 60s and understand that it was protested heavily in its time period. Heavily in its time period.
Like America needed to get involved in. And it's crazy how the number one superpower for military in all things lost to that were setting up Looney Tune.
Technically, we weren't the only superpower at that time. The USSR was also a superpower at that time.
Bad traps in the ground.
And those traps, man, that's what you do as a counterinsurgency. I mean, that's what the colonialists did with the English. That's what the Vietnamese did with the American troops. That's what the insurgents in Iraq did with our troops. They put IEDs all over the place. That's how you fight. That's how, when you're outmatched, when you are going against a larger army, you do things to mitigate it. You do things to either injure them, slow them down, to make them to where it slows their progression or to where they don't want to fight. Um, I'd say on a moral standpoint, most people feel that, yeah, we lost the Vietnam War, but on a military stand front, they're not going to say that we lost that because they're going to look at the numbers and see that we killed 100 times more enemy combatants than we lost soldiers in that war. But I mean, that's just depends on your take on it. Militarily wise, they're not going to see it as a defeat, but as a morality wise, as far as how people view that war, it's going to be seen, yeah, as it was an embarrassment. So it just really depends on your view of that particular conflict. All right, I'm just going to show these things here.
Also, the Iraq War is universally seen as a dumb war that shouldn't have happened by people now. Like, even Trump and Obama agree on that. That's probably the only thing they agree on. The reasons why these work, though, is because it was so much easier to push propaganda in the past. Like, in the Vietnam...
Again, dude, you're making a video based on propaganda that World War III was going to happen because people went online being anxious. I would say propaganda is still really good. And I just say that you probably are in it more than you realize to the point that you think that it's dead and you're drowning in it. It's easier to promote and push propaganda now than it ever was before.
War, they were playing TV ads saying this was all about freedom and nothing else. Taking ads out the newspaper saying the only way to be a man is by getting drafted to war.
Hey, honestly though, to serve in the army, to understand that might have to go fight in a war, to just warriors and battlefields from thousands of years, it takes a different man to want to do that. It takes a different man to be that. You have to be in a different mindset to do that. So yeah, I mean, to feel like a man, it definitely is a different level. So you can't poo-poo that. That is a different mindset.
And at the time before social media, everyone basically believed it because that's all that was shown. There wasn't anyone...
Again, that's not true. In the 60s, you had the counterculture and people protesting against the war and the government. In the 70s, you had it. In the 80s with Grenada, and even when we went into Panama a little bit, you had people arguing with Desert Storm. People were arguing against that. It's not like there weren't any people protesting against the government or not believing anything they said. That's been around since forever. To make it seem like Gen Z is the only ones to discover this, and again, that's your age group. That's the age group. They think that they're on the dawn of the precipice of enlightenment when they don't realize that everybody else since the beginning of time has already had these same thoughts, have already had these same conclusions or brainstorming sessions. It's nothing new. And I think he needs to realize that.
With major platforms that would go against it because they would get censored.
And yeah, and Walter Cronkite came out and basically said we were losing the Vietnam War. So
everyone watched media through a few news channels which would all say the same thing. During the Iraq War, though, that's when you first started seeing people actually start speaking up about things.
Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, hell, even Afghanistan on some level, people didn't want us going into that. Kosovo, when we bombed Kosovo, Bill Clinton and his Kosovo bombing. Again, my dude, you are at a computer where you can pull up and research, things before you say it. The Iraq War wasn't the first time people spoke up against. Anyway, there were people that spoke up against World War II. So,
saying, hey, maybe going into a country and murdering innocent civilians and committing war crimes isn't a good thing. Just maybe. But social media was still in its baby phases at the time it was going on, so there was still a lot of enthusiasm for it. But now with Gen Z, we grew up in the most free era of social media. No one would go because everyone would...
Again, that's not true. If you would have had... If you would have had 9/11 happen now, you would have probably the same reaction that we had when it happened in 2001. You would have people that would stand up and get ready to fight. To make it seem like your generation is like, oh, we were not going to do this. We're too smart. We understand it. That's not. You had people my age at that time that were like that. And then when September 11 happened, they were full ready to go and fight somebody. They were full ready to go and do it. This is the perception you get when you basically don't have to worry about dying, or you don't have to worry about a conflict. You get this perception of, oh, well, we would argue and we would fight against it. That's not true. You had people that protested against the Vietnam War that ended up having to go and fight in the Vietnam War, and they ended up picking up a gun and shooting people. You had conscientious objectors in every war that they aren't going to fight, and they sat in a stockade the entire war, sat in jail. This is nothing new.
Would know it would be another lie that the government is doing. And the military's numbers have already been dropping more than ever. People have been making fun of it because
Okay, so um, the military numbers go up and down. They just do. It's before September 11th, there were articles out about how the military was at a point where they were at their lowest recruitment level in history. It happens like every 10 years. We're at the lowest recruitment level for history. September 11th happened, and guess what? It went through the roof. So to make it seem like, oh yeah, no one's joining the military, it's at its lowest level because we don't believe in it. No, it's just there's 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 no. It takes a certain individual to want to go and join the military. If you have the opportunity of taking a trade and starting off making 50, 70 grand of being a plumber or being an electrician, you're going to do that over joining the military for 4 years. Whereas you might have more low income people that go into the military because it gives them a way to make money, it gives them a way to have some sort of security. So again, it fluctuates. Gen Z is not turning their back on the military. It fluctuates. It might in the next couple years rise. It just really depends.
because they be trying to recruit soldiers anywhere they can now. They've been seen at anime cons. They got whole Twitch channels.
Dude, they used to come to your high schools. They used to come to your high schools and recruit. They are on college campuses. They recruit. They go to sporting events and recruit. They go to monster truck rallies and recruit. They recruit anywhere. It's not a new thing. I'm sorry if that's new to you, but it's been around forever.
Now. They even got them at NBA games now. I'm not gonna lie, if I'm watching my glorious king LeBron putting up 40 points
Jesus, the fact that you're calling LeBron your king tells me a little bit about what I need to know about you.
and a military sergeant comes up to me like, hey son,
No King's Day though, right?
this game sure is great, right? Have you ever thought of the game of fighting for your country? Like, get the out my face, bro. I'm watching LeBron. Even if there was a chance it was true and we were rightfully defending ourselves from evil, the US government has lost so much trust in the public, no one would believe them. I don't know a single
Again, man, that's not anything new. That sways. Back in the '60s, you had people that lost trust in the government, probably at a larger rate than you have now. And through the '70s, nobody believed the government. Everybody hated politicians. Hated. I mean, after the Vietnam War, it was that was like a time in the country where just people didn't believe in themselves anymore. Didn't believe in anything that was being said. And the '80s kind of brought people back. Look, this dude's young. He's in a bubble. He's focused, like everybody from the age of 15 to 25, 15 to 27, or whatever. Their view of the world is jaded to just how they see it. You'll have some that have a broader perspective of it and understand things more, but then you have others that they think that they're discovering things for the first time, which they probably are, and they think that they're the only ones that know about it. When in reality, everybody already knows, and that seems like in this case is you have a generation that it's already been discovered, but they're just now discovering it, and they're making it seem like they are the finders of it, and they are the ones that are really promoting the quality of it, when in reality, it's been around for probably hundreds of thousands of years.
single man I've asked in Gen Z that said they would actually go if they got drafted. Most would rather just take the prison time or fine than go. And looking at it in the long run, it's not even that bad. It's 5 years in prison max if you don't go. So it's either you get 5 years max in prison for not going and stay.
Plus, you'd keep a felony, so you'd have a felony. Um, Depending on the situation, I mean, you could probably get a judge to wipe the felony off your record, but it's not just 5 years, it's also a felony. So you have to take that into perspective. And I get it. He's trying to weigh the possibility of going to war and dying or sitting in jail for 5 years, but at the same time, no one here gets out alive, my man. Everybody dies. And I get what you're saying. You don't want to be killed in action, but You could die in a car wreck. You could die being ran over by a car. You could die being struck by lightning. You could go in the water and be killed by an alligator. You could go and drown. You could um, be on a ladder in your house and fall and break your neck. You could be on a beach and a coconut nails you in the head and kills you. That stuff happens. I mean, there's hundreds of ways that you can die that you would not be happy about that could possibly happen. So I get he don't want to die in war, but let's not just make it seem like the best thing to do is to go to jail instead of dying when you can die at any point.
Stay alive, or go and potentially get obliterated on the battlefield by a missile straight to the head. Hey man, I don't know about y'all, but I'm throwing a party in that prison for every day we not in the warfield. I got a friend that served in the military for a couple of years, and even he said nowadays he'd rather take the prison.
No, you didn't. I've known many people that served in the military, and none of them, all walks of life, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, men, women. None of them sit there and went, and a lot of them fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. One got injured. Took two grenades. I knew a guy that died in Iraq. Um, None of them sat there and said that they wouldn't go. The majority of them would say if anything ever happened, they'd go again. Um, I don't believe he actually had a friend that served, and if he served, I mean, they just sat around. They haven't really had any conflicts or any action. So yeah, I don't believe that.
Time. Also, the younger generation has realized we don't want to fight a war because of a politician's beat.
The younger generation, every young generation, my friend, realizes that. Again, did you not? Please, 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 Tommy, research and study the 60s and the counterculture. You're basically given the same arguments that generation gave 60, 70 years ago. This is nothing new. What you guys in Generation Z are thinking and saying has already been said before by the boomers, by Gen X, by the generation beforehand, the generations before the name generations. It's all been said before. You guys aren't saying anything new. You're not championing anything new. You're just making yourself seem stupid, honestly.
Like, why don't y'all fight it yourselves? Why I gotta grab the military equipment while you sit on a plane watching from above drinking champagne? They should host a boxing match every year for world leaders, and whoever wins, their country gets the most benefits.
Some politicians used to have duels and used to shoot at each other to resolve things.
For that year. Looking at our leader for now, though, yeah, we might be losing for the next couple of years if that happens. Also, growing up in this age, we've gotten exposed to how badly these war injuries leave people. This right here might be the sole reason.
Growing up in this age, you've become exposed. Well, I'll say this. There is more with the internet and different media that, yeah, you see more things than you would ever see before in your life. But war injuries have been around. I mean, pictures, stories of them have been around forever. It's not anything new. Again, it might be new to your generation that you're just now discovering it. Congratulations. But I remember growing up seeing pictures of World War II battle injuries, pictures of dead soldiers on the beach, pictures of dead soldiers on the battlefield, Vietnam injuries. And so on and so on. I mean, burns from Vietnam, from napalm that you see. So, congratulations that you guys are just now catching up to what the majority of the population already knew.
And Gen Z would never join in. There's always a chance you could end up with one of those. People in war lose body parts I didn't even know was possible to lose. The day I'm at war and they try to obliterate my meat, the whole place is getting torn down. They should have tried to stop those images from coming out, because who the hell would want to potentially get involved in a war after seeing pictures like that? And it's crazy because it could happen at any moment to you on the warfield. One day you're chilling in the breezy
just as you can die at any moment. I mean, that's just life.
weather of Iraq and
Sure, in a conflict zone, your percentages are higher, but
115-degree weather. You're vibing, then you look to the right and see a man with 20 cc's of C4 strapped to his chest running to you at Usain Bolt speed. And now you end up looking like Two-Face back at home. I'm not sitting here and saying all of America's wars were unjustified though. Like, I always appreciate the veterans out there who fought, because most of the time, even if the war ended up being unjustified, a lot joined to fight for justified reasons at what they were told and then felt bad when they realized it was a lie. And also for World War II, America was justified in a lot, like, let's be real, mainly making sure Adolf didn't end up owning the world. But like I said,
Well, I mean, that's somewhat true. One, the United States, if it probably wasn't for Japan attacking Pearl Harbor, the United States probably would not have fully engaged into World War II. Let's be honest. We were sending supplies and material to Europe, well, mostly to England. But for the most part, we were trying to stay out of that war. At that time, and even now, the largest immigrant population in the United States was German, to the point that you had Madison Square Garden in that time period host about 20,000 people, the Nazi American Party that were pro-Nazi, pro-German, and there was a lot of people in the country at the time that were pro-Nazi, pro-German. So, I mean, there's a little discrepancy with that. I think honestly, if we would not have been attacked in Pearl Harbor, the United States would have stayed out of that war. As far as putting boots on the ground, they would have stayed out of it. But Pearl Harbor happened, which caused us to get involved on both sides because once Japan attacked us, then Hitler declared war on the United States. So again, that was probably a mistake by him, in which he made a lot of mistakes in that war. But if it wasn't for Japan, we probably would not have been boots on the ground in that war, because we just saw that as another European war that we didn't want to get involved in.
no matter how justified a conflict may be, the trust is gone from the public. It'll take a real hard campaign to have the youth agree the government is totally not lying in what they're saying. And the president...
Again, you guys aren't the first generation to think that the government or politicians are lying to you. I mean, that's been around forever. I'm glad you guys are waking up to it. Good for you, but it's nothing new. Congratulations.
we have now is totally not a liar, right?
One thing I can promise you this.
Hey, I'm going to tell you, my dude, Tommy, all politicians lie. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on. All of them lie. Every president lies. Every president has been caught in a lie at some point. Every politician lies, dude. That's how they stay in power. If you just think it's one side, you are going to have one heck of an education for the rest of your life. Every politician lies.
I will always tell you the truth.
He don't even believe that himself. Do you see his face? He was probably holding back a laugh so hard in his mind. That's the thing that's most important in a war. Having a person that the younger generation wholeheartedly trusts. It's a reason why a lot of dictatorships completely ban social media. Because they can fully propaganda the younger generation to look up to the leader.
That's true to an extent. I'd say probably North Korea. Yeah, I mean, North Korea is basically, if you look like at satellite images at night, North Korea is just completely blacked out, like electronic wise, like it just there's nothing there. And yeah, they suppress the internet in North Korea to the point that, I mean, their people honestly believe the rest of the world wants to cannibalize and eat them. In China and Russia and other dictatorships and authoritative countries, they try to suppress it. But the problem is the technology has moved so fast and beyond what you can actually control that information is going to get through. The truth of situations that is actually going to get through. So they can cover as much as they want, but stuff still gets through. The other thing is that more people travel now than ever before. More people from Russia, China, Iran travel to other parts of the country or other parts of the world. And they actually see that it's not what their government says. And that's what these governments have to contend against, is that you have more people that are actually traveling. So they can control the population of the country that maybe doesn't have the necessity or doesn't have the funds to actually venture around out of the world. But for the most part, it's hard for authoritative governments and dictatorships to actually control technology now with the way it's exploded. And that's probably one thing that's going to bring some of these countries down, is because they actually can't control the amount of truth or the amount of reality that is getting into these countries. North Korea, yeah, it definitely does. But hell, even us living in a free country with information, it allows people to promote bullcrap. Again, to say propaganda is dead, my man is being used by it because propaganda exists on a full level here in this country, to the point that it's got him believing that it's dead.
And they're all gonna believe in them. Even having someone that they trust is hard, but having someone that the younger generation doesn't trust, yeah, it's gonna be damn near impossible for the government to try to get.
Every younger generation doesn't trust the older generation, my dude. That's just life. That's just welcome to the club. Again, that age from 15, 14, 15 to 25, 27. They don't trust anybody older. That's just how it goes.
Us on the war train with that. No matter your view on Trump, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that most of Gen Z does not have a good view on him.
So here's the thing, though. You say this, but if the Chinese dropped a bomb on Los Angeles or dropped a bomb on New York or any large city, I guarantee you the majority of your generation would sign straight up for military action, to fight in a war. That's just how, again, before September 11th, the majority of my age group did not want to join the army, was not having it, was not wanting to be a part of it, did not want to fight in a war, did not want to do any of that stuff. Then September 11th happened, and boom, it flipped on its head, and everybody was ready to sign up. Everybody was ready to go. So he's living in a world where there hasn't really been any major conflict with us, at least in 20 years. So it's easy to say that, oh yeah, we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that, because that's all you guys know is not conflict. But the minute something happens, watch how quick a country becomes a war-ready country. It happened with World War II, it happened with September 11th, and it could happen again.
Take a room of 10 of us, and I would say at least 8 people are gonna say they don't like.
Okay, again, maybe because all those people are in your bubble. If he would to go out into public and just find 10 random people and ask them, it'd probably be half. Half would say yeah, half would say no. I don't think it would be, an 80% saying no, we wouldn't. This is what I would say to this younger generation. You guys have got to get out of your bubbles. You can't just all have the same viewpoints, because then your view of the world is jaded. Your view of politics, your view of economy, your view of personal relationships, your view of religion, race, and whatever is just jaded to the individuals that you continue to talk with. You have to get out of your bubble. You have to get offline. You have to stay off of X. You don't sit and watch YouTube all day. Get out and actually talk to people. Get out and be a functioning individual, and see the different views of the world, and actually see that, yeah, they might have a different opinion and I might not agree with it, but at the same time, they say a lot of things that might be true. To stay in a bubble is not good, and I worry that this is what Gen Z does. Is they just find people to boost up their opinions and views on things, and it just bolsters them thinking they're right when they actually, like in this guy's take, are having a lot of outtakes to where they're even arguing with themselves in this video.
Like him. And look, like I've said in the past, I'm not even one of those that's a Trump hater 24/7 and spends all day writing hate articles on him. But if you truly think the younger generation would fully be behind him declaring a war on.
Yeah, again, if a city was to be bombed by a foreign country, don't be shocked if the large majority of them are like, hell yeah, let's get in and let's do this. That's part of um, being in a country, being a human in a country, or being a part of a populous country. I mean, yeah, I think he would be shocked to see that a large portion, while he's sitting in jail, 95% of his generation would probably be ready to go.
on another country, you're delusional. Bro, we just had a protest around the whole country against what he's doing. And because
Yeah, and what happened with that? Nothing. Nothing happened with that. Hey, the reason why you guys were allowed to protest is because you live in a democracy. Russia, China, Iran, some of the other Middle Eastern countries, some countries in South America are not going to allow you to do this stuff. You are allowed to go out and protest your No King's Day and whatnot. And what happened? It's still going on. It didn't change anything, but you were allowed to protest. Good for you. But that, I mean, that's not good. That doesn't prove anything. You guys went out, you said your piece, nothing changed, life moved on.
he's commander-in-chief and can set whatever war policies he wants, I would not.
No, that's not true too. Do presidents sign off like he did when bombing Iran, like Obama did with bombing Syria, Lebanon, or not Lebanon, Libya, and a few other places in the Mideast? Bush and Clinton, same thing. Yeah, you have that where they don't need the authority to do it; they can just do it. But to go to war, you have to have the approval of the Congress and the Senate. It has to run through them to where they agree and go, yep, let's do it. Now, can he propose policies that he'd like to have more control of? Yeah, he can. It still has to run through the Congress and Senate. And if there is, if it sways more to whatever party might be in power, then yeah, he might, that individual might get those powers. But there's always been that counterbalance to not give a president that many powers. So again, he needs to educate himself a little bit more on this. The president just can't go, hey, guess what? We're going to war. Load up. Let's go. That's not how it works. He has to get approval for it. Can they bomb places? Obviously they can, and they don't need the authority to do that.
Trust what the this would implement. Like, what if he implements a policy where if your meat is smallest, you got to be the first to go because you probably can't repopulate the population after it drops from all the casualties? All of us would be like, I don't know if I can trust the man leading the war that says this on stage.
Because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm gonna bomb the out of them.
Imagine he forgot there was a couple of soldiers on the warfield and threw one right in the middle of the fight. Also, another reason why the younger generation wouldn't be motivated to join in is because we really got nothing to look forward to and have no hope for an American dream. Our economy's still from COVID and inflation is still going on. No one can get a job on the mainland already, and most of Gen Z ain't gonna get a house in their lifetime.
Again, you guys are acting like you have the worst. You had people in the depression era, for those years that lost their house, were living in cars, were living in shacks, weren't sure where they were going to get their food for the day, let alone the week. You you guys, look, I'm not saying you guys have it easy, but you guys have it easier than probably any generation before y'all. One, even though, yeah, a lot of things are expensive, you can still afford a house. You can still afford an apartment. You can still afford some sort of cover over your head. And it's not anything new of people not buying their own houses. There's, for the last 100 years, you'll have people that either just stay in the house they grew up in, or they move out for a little bit and then come back into it. That's just part of human life and human nature, unfortunately. So to make it seem like you guys are worse off than any generation before you is another L take. I get what he's saying as far as the issues that they have to deal with, but every age group, every generation, every era has some sort of issues that they have to deal with. I mean, that's just life. You got to find your dude. You are making money on social media. Let's not act like it's not the easiest time to make money. You have 700,000 subscribers. You have 525,000 people that have viewed this video. You're making money off of this. Let's not act like you guys don't know how to make money. You guys are probably, your generation probably is the most successful and most understanding of how to make money in this type of element than any generation before. And probably making more money off of it than any generation before. So let's not act like you guys don't know what you're doing or just don't know how to make money. There's ways to do it.
At least back then, when you fought a war, you had those things to look forward to. You came back and could work a shift as a cashier and buy a house in 2 years. Nowadays, instead of that, you're gonna come back and have no work available to you, probably still be living with your parents. All the femcells on Twitter and TikTok are gonna be laughing at the men dying on the warfield. And don't count on the government to help you either after. It's so sad to me that there's people out there that served the country and helped keep it alive, only for them to end up homeless with no help.
Yeah, and that's on a federal level and also on a state level. They have done a horrible job with that. And that's just, I mean, that's just pitiful. I mean, that's been that way. I mean, you go back to World War One with a lot of those guys coming back shell shocked, as they called it at the time, with PTSD through Vietnam, where just the soldiers were not treated well when they came back because there wasn't a real understanding. It was, well, if you came back home and you're good to go. And they're getting better on that, but yeah, you still have a lot of these problems.
From the government. In what world should homeless veterans even be a thing, bro? We spend $880 billion on the military a year. Everyone who served in war should be eating good and kicking back for the rest of their lives. They did something.
So here's what I'll say. I mean, yeah, you can question the budget that's being spent on military and what it could be better used for, but then at the same time, you can look at what just happened in Iran. Iran is using the same materials that the Russians and Chinese are using. They were given from defensive materials from Russia, China, maybe a little bit from North Korea, and it was obliterated in half a day by basically United States Western technology. It was completely obliterated. If you look at what's going on in Ukraine with Russia, they can't even move 2 feet in that country and they're getting obliterated by an army that's a third of the size. They have better equipment. If anything, both Russia invading Ukraine and in this quick little conflict with Iran really showed Russia and China they're still not on the level with the United States. And China, when Russia went into Ukraine, China was watching Russia because they were looking at possibly trying to invade Taiwan at the same time. And when they saw that Russian equipment was just getting obliterated and they were caught in a quagmire quickly against Western equipment, the Chinese backed off that. And you saw them kind of beginning to talk about Taiwan again. And then you had this thing with Iran happen, and the United States went in and just bombed the hell out of it, military-wise. China backed off again. I think China realizes they're still 5-7 years away, military-wise, to be on some sort of level with the United States. So, yeah, you can complain about it, but at the same time, you have to be comfortable with knowing that if there was actually a war that went on, we would have a higher chance of actually winning it and handling our business through that, because what we've just seen in the last couple of years shows that the Western equipment is still 10 times better than anything that's being made in Russia, China, and North Korea.
Something that none of us wanted to do when the politicians and then got the end of the stick. If I was them, I would take back all of my service and stay my ass on the mainland. The government has tried to right those wrongs and make better benefits for people, but you still end up with people who got left behind and have nothing. You just have to sit there and pray that a war doesn't actually. Right now, there's about a 95% chance a draft in war. I'm gonna let you know right now, there's about a 95% chance no draft happens. Like, first off.
Okay, so now did he say? Let me take that back. I'm pretty sure that he's just said.
I'm gonna let you know right now, there's about a 95% chance no draft happens. Like, first off, half of our.
Okay, so he made a video saying how Gen Z won't fight in a war, and if you drafted them, they'd rather go to jail. And then at the end of the video, because that's his whole take in this video, is that Gen Z won't fight in a war. And at the end of the video, of what you're saying is that Gen Z wouldn't fight. You're telling them, well, there's a 95% chance that a draft wouldn't happen. You don't have to worry about it anyways. Hey, man, at least stand on business if you're going to have this argument. Stand up and say exactly why they wouldn't go and that if the draft happened. Otherwise, why are we watching this video? You just nullified your argument right at the end.
If you live in the United States, goes to the military. We spend $880 billion a year on the military, and Iran spends a whopping 10 billion.
Yeah, and that's why they got
Their whole
obliterated.
military operation would get wiped in like 2 nanoseconds if they.
And that's what happened. It got wiped out in the first day of that conflict. Look what happened, and he's probably too young. The Iraq War. We went in. Their army basically said, forget this. We're out." The only Iraqi army that fought were the ones that really believed in their cause and the insurgents. That's only the ones that really fought. The majority of that army was like, "F this," and drop their guns or just abandon positions, and we're just out. I'm done. That's the same thing that would happen in Russia. That's the same thing that would happen in North Korea. It's the same thing that happened in China. You would have these countries that once their defense would be knocked down, they're just like, "Hey, man, we're out," because they don't actually believe in their government. They don't believe in what's been said to them as far as what's going on in the world. So you might not like the business, the spending that we're doing on the defense budget, but I'd rather have a conflict or a war that's done in 2 weeks instead of one that takes 10, 11 years. And the way our military is right now, and the way it's going, to where you're going to have more drones, more AI controlled situations. You're going to have less people on front lines. You're going to have more special forces conflicts. You're going to have more situations where, like what Israel just did in Iran, where you have people in country already that are obliterating things to keep the numbers down. That's where the war is headed. It's going to be more technology wise and less people motivated wise. So that's probably a good thing about the way that we're spending money, but you can take that either way, that argument either way.
Actually tried to attack civilians. They would learn the true reason why we don't have free healthcare. The last thing they'd ever want to do is let all politicians put their political beliefs aside and let Congress come together and let Trump do whatever the he'd want to do in a war. It wouldn't matter if their allies got involved, which I don't think they would even do. They would have so much more to lose with Iran, like it wouldn't be worth it. Also, they wouldn't do it because I'm here. They know I don't play when I say leave us alone.
One, we weren't ever going to invade Iran. I don't know. Again, this is just that generation overthinking things. Again, two, if we did, their army would get. Listen, they are controlled by the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah, when that conflict started with Israel, disappeared into a bunker. Said to his people, "I'm out." Israelis murked all the leadership of Iran, just completely obliterated all the leadership. He was hiding in a bunker while his people were left out there alone. He's still in a bunker as we speak now because he's still worried that Israel is going to hit him with a missile. Iran will have a revolution the minute that guy is killed because he's the only thing that basically still has control over the people. They're still worried with him being alive that he would send the military on the people. Their military is fractured. Their military in this conflict was reaching out to others going, "Hey man, if you guys come in, we will support you. We will drop our arms and we will support you on your." That's what happened in the Iraq War. A majority of their military said, "Hey, we don't want to fight. We don't believe in this guy. We will help you." And a large portion of the Iraqi army actually joined forces with the United States and became to the point that they didn't obliterate the Iraqi army. They left them intact. It's the same thing that happened in Iran. So that's another L take as far as not wanting to invade Iran. It's not going to be that hard.
Anyways, follow me on Twitter, Instagram.
Hey, look, this is what I'll say to this younger generation. One, propaganda is in full effect, still exists, and is probably more powerful than it ever has been in any pinpoint in time. For him to say that it was dead, L take. For him to say that his generation wouldn't fight if a war had started or we were attacked, that's another L take. Everybody would come out the woodwork ready to go. I love this generation because they think that all their thoughts, just because they put them on the internet and just because they have never been had before. As if my generation, the generation before me, the generation before that, as if nobody ever thought these things. As if we were just walking around going, "Oh, it's such a nice day outside. I love being walking around. Oh, hey, hey, I love this, I love that. Brr, brr, brr." No, man, these arguments have been going around for hundreds, if not thousands of years as not trusting the government, not trusting politicians. I mean, you had Caesars stabbed in official buildings. because they didn't trust him or they didn't believe him anymore. You've had politicians assassinated because of propaganda, political believings. You've had countries overthrown. It's nothing new. The stuff that you're bringing up, the stuff that you're arguing about, is nothing new. None of this is anything surprising. And honest to God, you as a generation need to study things more. Need to, and again, you have it at the palm of your hand. Need to look up and understand and have a more intelligent argument, more intelligent conversation, and than just coming on and acting like you, oh, I just had a thought. This is probably the first thought that anybody ever had in history. I'm going to go and put it online because it's not. Because it's not. Yeah, this concept that you guys are the first enlightened generation is it's not it. You are at the end of the line of the generation lines that other people. We are that meme. We are the James Franco looking at you with the noose around our neck, going first time, because these arguments have been had before. I respect that he's up here giving his opinion, but he needs to get out more. He needs to have more people in his bubble than the ones that he already has. Having said that, hey guys, you guys need to get out more, enjoy the world, find some good earth and dig it, stay off X, stay off YouTube as much as possible. Don't spend hours on it. Propaganda is still real and it's still in full effect. Take it easy.